I want to thank Don Moultrop and the members of the City Club for inviting me here today. It is wonderful to be back in this city, and I see a lot of friends and, you know, in some cases, mentors. Pastor, it's wonderful to see you again. Otis Moss is one of my favorite people. So, now, every sitting president since Ronald Reagan has come here to the City Club of Cleveland to take your questions. And that's because this is an institution that reflects what is a truly American idea. And that's the belief that all of us have a role to play in resolving the most important issues of our time. In a democracy, the most important office is the office of citizen. And the City Club tradition reflects that. Now, over the course of my presidency, one that began in the depths of a historic crisis, no issue has been more important than the future of our economy. That's certainly been of great interest in Ohio and in Cleveland. No topics weighed more heavily on the minds of ordinary families, and no subject is more worthy of a great, big, open debate. 75 years ago, another president came to Cleveland to engage in this debate. He was nearing the end of his second term, 8 years in office marked by a devastating depression, a hard-fought recovery, fierce political divisions at home, looming threats overseas. But for all the challenges of a changing world, FDR refused to accept the notion that we are anything less than the masters of our fate. We are characters in this living book of democracy, he said, but we are also its authors. It falls upon us now to say whether the chapters that are to come will tell a story of retreat or of continued advance. That's a pretty good summary of where we are today. That was the choice that was laid out back then, a story of retreat or a story of continued advance. America chose the latter, and we're better for it. And 3/4 of a century later, we face a similar choice. In a world changing even faster than his, do we retreat from the realities of a 21st century economy, or do we continue to advance together to renew this country's founding promise of opportunity for everybody and not just some? So before I take questions, I want to spend some time talking about that choice. And I want to set the stage by talking about where the economy is today. Following the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, in fact, by some measures, the contraction of our economy was faster and deeper than the Great Recessions. We just pulled out of it faster because we had learned some lessons from the past. We're now in the midst of the longest streak of private sector job growth on record, 60 consecutive months, 5 straight years, 12 million new jobs. America's businesses have added more than 200,000 jobs each month for 12 straight months. That's the first time that's happened in nearly 40 years. Our unemployment rate has fallen from a peak of 10% in 2009. When I first came into office, we were losing jobs at a pace of almost 800,000 jobs per month. Today, the unemployment rate is at 5.5%. Just last year, we saw the fastest unemployment rate decline in 30 years. And in one of the most hopeful signs, middle-class wages are finally starting to tick up again, finally starting to go up. Now, this progress is no accident. First and foremost, it's the direct result of you, the drive and determination of the American people. But I'm going to take a little credit. It's also the result of decisions made by my administration in partnership with some of these members of Congress who are here to prevent a second depression and to lay a new foundation for growth and prosperity. And a lot of those decisions were controversial. And there was a lot of resistance and obstruction. But we decided to continue to advance. We believed that if the last decade was defined by outsourcing of good jobs overseas, then we could define this decade by bringing back good jobs to America. And today there are more job openings in the United States than at any time since 2001. The auto industry that we rescued, despite the fact that it was not popular at the time, is firing on all cylinders. That's making a difference right here in Ohio. Factories are opening their doors at the fastest pace in nearly 2 decades. Over the last 5 years, manufacturers have added jobs at a rate not seen since the 1980s. Everybody talked about manufacturing being dead. You know what? Manufacturing is actually growing at a faster pace than the rest of the economy. And more foreign companies are realizing that made in the USA is a trademark to be proud of, and they're choosing to invest in America. Something I'm going to discuss next week at our Select USA Summit, where we get local and state officials and economic development organizations to meet with foreign investors from around the world in one-stop shopping to start getting more investment and more businesses right here in the United States. We believed that we could prepare our kids and our workers for a more competitive world. And today, our younger students earn the highest math and reading scores on record. Our high school graduation rate hit another all-time high. More Americans are earning their degrees than ever before. We believed we could grow the economy and create new jobs even while we were reducing our dependence on foreign oil and even as we were tackling climate change and protecting our planet. Today, America is not just #1 in oil and gas, we're #1 in wind power. Last year was the biggest year for solar power in our history. We're producing 3 times as much wind power and 10 times as much solar power as we did when I came into office.